You're watching a lesson on computer account management. Now, in other lessons, we've learned about other Active Directory domain services objects like user accounts and group accounts. Well, here's another one, and this is just called computer accounts, and we're going to see, well, how exactly we work with them in Active Directory domain services. Okay, so real quick, and I say real quick because we're not going to spend much time here. We're actually going to jump over to another computer. But real quick here, I wanted to show you we are on NYDC1, which is our domain controller for the forest root domain for globalmantics.local. And I also want to quickly jump into Active Directory users and computers because I want to show you one thing, and then we're going to leave this machine. And that one thing is the computer's container. I want you to notice that this default container for where our computer accounts will be, you'll notice it's blank. Now, don't worry about why it's blank. I just wanted you to see that it is blank. So let me go ahead and close out of that utility, and I'm going to actually minimize this remote desktop connection to NYDC1. And I'm going to go ahead and connect here to my Windows 8 client. Okay, so this is a Windows 8 client. And actually, this is wrong that it's trying to log in as a Global Mantics administrator. We need to log on as a local account, Win8-Client1. That's the name of the computer that I've set up, this Windows 8 computer. And the user that I've put on this computer is named Trainer. I'll put in its password. It really doesn't matter when it comes to those specifics that I was just giving you. I mean, the bottom line here is it's a Windows 8 client, meaning it's a computer with Windows 8 installed on it, and that's pretty much it. Okay, I haven't done anything else to it other than I gave it a name, and I've made sure it has an appropriate IP address on the network, and I've made sure that it's pointing to an appropriate DNS server. So to see some of this, let me go ahead and click Start, and I'm going to type in command, which gets us to a command prompt. And I'll type ipconfig. I'll do a /all. There's a lot of stuff here, so I'm going to scroll up because it's the stuff at the top that I want you to see. The main thing I want you to see here is it's actually getting its IP address from a DHCP server. Okay, so my router is also a DHCP server, so that was no big deal, but it does have an IP address on the .10 network. But specifically, I've told it to point to a DNS server of 192.168.10.201. And the reason is because that is NYDC1. Okay, that is the DNS server for the globalmantics.local domain. Why do we care? Well, I'm going to show you why we care, because you might be thinking right now, wait a minute, it seems like we've gone into a whole different lesson. No, this is a lesson on computer accounts. I want to show you the number one way that computer accounts are typically created, and that is they are created by joining the domain. Okay, when a computer joins the domain, it will join and create its computer account at the same time. It doesn't have to be done that way, and I will show you how else it could be done, but that is how it is probably done more often than anything else. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Start, and I'm going to type in the word computer so that I can right-click computer and go to Properties. Right? This takes me to the system properties for this machine, and this is where you can see that it's a Win8 client-client1. That's the name of the computer. But you'll notice we're still part of a work group. So I'm going to click Change Settings. And I'm going to change and say that I want to become a member of globalmantics.local. When I click OK, if everything works the right way, it should prompt me for credentials, right? I'm logged in as a local user account. Right, I'm just logged in as some account named Trainer that I created when I installed the operating system. My domain doesn't know who that is. So I'm going to put in administrator, right? That's the globalmantics.local administrator. It says that right here. And put in administrator's password. And again, if I typed everything correctly, when I click OK, it takes just a moment here, but it should end up saying welcome, and there it goes, welcome to the globalmantics.local domain. I'll click OK. It tells me I must reboot for these changes to take effect, so I will click OK once again and close and go ahead and restart now. Now what's going to happen when it goes to reboot, and you can see it just happened, I get kicked out. Why? Because I was on a remote desktop connection to my Windows 8 client, but that's okay. I don't need to be on that Windows 8 client anymore because really I want to be showing you computer accounts in Active Directory. So if I come down here, remember I just minimized my New York DC1 connection. So let's go back into that computer and let's jump back into Active Directory, users and computers. And you'll notice that my computers container now has, let me expand this so we can see it, it has a computer account for Win8-Client1. That is typically how computer accounts are created. Now we also could manually create a computer account, and this is what's sometimes called pre-staging a computer account, okay, where you have the computer account created before that particular client machine is joined to the domain. So I could right-click on the container, select New Computer, and I could say Win8-Client2, just for instance. All right, there's not much else we have to do here. I could assign it as a pre-Windows 2000 computer if it was all the way back to Windows NT, but that's not realistic. Click OK. And you'll see there that I have another computer account. This is something that you might see, this pre-staging thing, is it happens when you're doing mass deployments. If you want to have control over those deployments, sometimes you'll write a script and you will mass create computer accounts in advance. Now, I had actually shown this once very briefly before, but these are all of our client computer accounts that will exist in the computers container, whereas if we go down here to the domain controllers container, this is where we will find our domain controller computer accounts. Okay, and again, those are put there by default when the computer became a domain controller in this particular domain. If I were to go to the properties of one of these computer accounts, there's not a whole lot to do with it. I mean, you'll see there's information you can see about it, the operating system. The Member Of tab, you can actually join groups. Believe it or not, computers can join groups. We can do a little bit with delegation as far as specific delegation of trust. Again, more advanced, not stuff we're going to get into right now. Location attribute, again, more advanced than we're getting into right now. But I will tell you there are the basics here of helping to locate objects in certain places by using the location attribute. And it's a little bit tricky. When we do get to it later on, I will tell you it's tricky in the sense that you have to be really accurate with what you're doing or else this doesn't work. And there's not much else here. You can say somebody specifically manages a computer account. And then there's a dial-in tab that has to do with dial-in, which not even going to go there. Same thing with the user account. Didn't even go there. Very little that's done with that tab at this point in time. It doesn't mean a literal dial-in. I mean, there is VPN that still counts as dial-in, but again, won't bother with it now. The point is that I wanted to show you here, there's not a lot when it comes to managing a computer account. Okay, for the most part, they're there. And why are they there? For auditing. Okay, that's the security component that we have computer accounts for auditing. When we want to know who did something, we might want to know where they did it from. Well, by having an actual authenticated computer account in Active Directory, we can know where the user performed a certain action from. I will also tell you that technically a computer account does have a password. But again, you'll notice if I go back into the property sheet, there was nowhere on here anything about a password. We didn't create a password when we created the account. It's automatically created and it's automatically reset and updated and kept in sync between the actual computer and the computer account in Active Directory. But if it were to ever get out of sync and you get error messages and you can't log in, if it tells you that the computer account is not, and there's a variety of messages and they've changed over the years, but basically if you can't log in from that computer, you can actually right click and you can choose to reset the account. Resetting the account is like resetting the password. And when I reset that account, it says, are you sure you want to do it? Yeah, let's do it. Okay, it's been done. Again, you're not putting in the password, you're just telling it to reset it. Once you reset it, what you then typically do, even though theoretically you're not supposed to always have to do it, but what you then do is you then go out to the client, you disjoin from the domain, and you rejoin back into the domain on the newly reset account. But again, that's kind of an isolated scenario, but it's a scenario that does happen. Now, the one last thing that I'll talk to you about when it comes to computer accounts is that by default, clients are going to go into this computers container, and by default, domain controllers are going to go into the domain controllers container. If you don't want them there, if you want the computer accounts to be somewhere else, you can move them. You can move any object really in Active Directory in one of two ways. If I go to my computers container, and let's say I don't want this Win8 Client 2 computer account in this container, I could right-click and select Move. And let's say I put them in the domain controllers container, which would not make sense because it's not a domain controller, but just for the sake of showing it to you, and click OK. You'll notice it disappears, and if I click on the domain controllers container, there it is. Another way you can move objects, and probably what I think is an easier way, is to simply click and drag. And you get a little warning saying, moving an object can prevent your existing system from working the way it was designed. And the main reason is because when it comes to different containers and different organizational units, you create them and you put objects in them for the purposes of applying group policy settings. So you're going to change how group policy settings are applied by moving them to another container. And I'm saying, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I know, don't worry, no problems here. Click yes, it disappears, go to the computers container, it's back there. Now from there, I'm going to actually delete this computer account. Are you sure you want to delete it? Yes. Again, keep in mind, if you ever delete an Active Directory object, if I were to create another computer account and call it Win8-Client2, it's not the same object, just a new object with the same name, because the SID is different. So the only other thing I want to do, let me go ahead and close this, and I'm going to actually close completely out of New York DC1. Let's go back to our Windows 8 client and put in the credentials for the Global Mantix administrator account. It's all to remember them. Okay, see, I'm putting in my credentials for Global Mantix this time, not for that local account. And the reason is because if everything worked, and I'm hoping it did, it looks like it did so far, this client machine has joined the Global Mantix domain. In other words, we know it joined in the sense that we saw, the computer account existed over in Active Directory. Now we're witnessing from the client side, yes, I can actually log on as a Global Mantix user, because I've logged on, you can only semi-see it here, as Global Mantix administrator. Now you'll notice here it's taking a little while to log on, and the reason is because this is the very first logon for this user. And so the first time any user logs on to a computer, it creates what's called a profile for that user account. But now you can see we are logged in as administrator. On my start screen here, if I were to start typing in computer, if I right-click computer and go down to properties, brings up our system properties, and you'll see that we are now win8-client1.globalmantix.local. We are part of the globalmantix.local domain. So we have successfully joined. And that's pretty much how you manage computer accounts. And so that brings us to the end of this lesson, where we've learned that, besides the user accounts, we all know it's instinctive to know that as a user, I'm going to have an account on a network. And we know this because, well, as a user, we're always logging in, right? We have a username and a password. Well, we've now learned that computers, the actual machine that we sit at, well, they also have an account in Active Directory, and we've seen how to work with those accounts as well. So that's it for computer management, and I'll see you in the next lesson.